radioactive are our oceans? That question has been top of the mind for many West Coast residents since the Fukushima nuclear disaster in Japan nearly 3 years ago. Now, 3,000 miles from the Pacific, a scientist in Woods Hole is asking concerned coastal residents to help answer that question. He's launched a crowdsourcing campaign to gather both funding and water samples. WGBH News' Heather Goldstone has our story.
As the Fukushima nuclear power plant began to melt down, first responders poured millions of gallons of seawater onto the overheating reactors, preventing a worse disaster. But as this computer simulation shows, it left a growing plume of radioactive water off the Japanese coast. Now, 3 years later, ocean currents have carried some of that water to the west coast.
Start by saying radioactive can be dangerous, but not at the levels we expect. But if you're not measuring them, then people still can have concerns. It's an easy thing to be alarmed about when you don't know what the levels are.
And that, says Dr. Ken Bissler, is the problem. No federal agency is measuring radioactivity levels off the Pacific coast or willing to give him funding to do it himself.
So we've been trying to make the case, several trips to Washington, and we're hearing back that, yes, this type of work is in the U.S. national interest, but the question is who's going to be responsible for it.
So Bissler decided to take matters into, well, everyone's hands through crowdsourcing, using a website to recruit financial donations and help collect water samples.
Since there are no government agencies sampling or funding this, we thought it's an easy thing to sample. Why not send out kits to people who live on Malibu or San Francisco, go down to their beach, collect water, ship it back to Woods Hole, and we analyze it for cesium, put up on a map then what the results look like.
The hallway outside Bissler's lab is jammed with kits ready to be shipped. Each one contains a 5-gallon container and instructions on how to use it.
And we use that kit to close up, fill up, and send back to Woods Hole. They slap on a label. We've already paid for the postage. It's actually a big part of the cost.
Every $550 he receives covers the cost of shipping and analysis of one sample kit. But it doesn't pay for basic expenses, like keeping the lights on in Bissler's lab.
This is really not the true cost. I had to be about 4 or 5 times higher if they were trying to cover all of this extra cost per sample. And I don't think I can ask or should be asking the public right now anyway to pay for that.
Our radioactive ocean currently has 5 sampling sites up and running, and they've raised almost $500 so far. They're hoping to expand the project and keep it going for at least 2 years.
All right, so Heather, does Dr. Bissler think there's actually any danger to the West Coast from this radiation?
No significant danger, no. The levels that are expected are extremely low, and he says there's no such thing as zero danger with radiation, but the levels are expected to be 250 times lower than the EPA's drinking water standard. And clearly we're not talking about drinking the ocean. So these are very low levels in the realm of what's naturally in the environment.
Well, why is he bothering with this, frankly?
That's a good question. Despite the fact that the levels are so low, there has been a lot of fear. And what we're talking about in terms of what's expected is just that. It's a prediction. Now, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has looked at debris from the tsunami. And if you see in this animation that we have of debris moving across the Pacific, it's been doing just that. It's already hit California. It's hit Alaska, along the West Coast. And the same sort of thing is expected to happen with the radiation. Scientists think they have a good understanding of ocean currents. And I think we have a map of all those different currents that we know about. We expect the radiation to be hitting California, some of it to be going up to Alaska, and we have some of the most lucrative fisheries in the country there. We have a really vibrant coastal culture. Even the perception of a risk can be a problem.
It's scary. Okay, so why isn't the government funding this? Why is this poor Dr. Bissler out there all by himself on this?
Another really good question. He's actually gone to 5 different agencies to try to get this funded. And basically it comes down to the fact that budgets are very tight right now. And everyone seems to think that it's someone else's problem. So the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration says, well, we're looking at the debris, but we don't do the chemicals. We don't do radiation. The Department of Energy says we do radiation, but only on land. Similar from the Environmental Protection Agency, the Food and Drug Administration.
What about EPA? Because they often are the ones who deal with toxic waste and dumps. It seems like.
So they say chemicals, but not radioactivity. That would be the Department of Energy. Food and Drug Administration says, yes, but this isn't affecting our food supply. National Science Foundation says we do basic research. This is really an applied problem. And so everybody has a way of justifying that it's not their thing to fund.
Why is Woods Hole so involved in this? There must be some other scientific labs who are looking at this on the West Coast.
Well, the Scripps Institute of Oceanography on the West Coast is one of the sampling locations for this. But Dr. Bissler, some of his first research goes back to Chernobyl 25-odd years ago. One of the problems that he sees going forward is the fact that, in fact, there's not much expertise about radioactivity in the ocean. He is one of the only ones, and we've lost a lot of the knowledge that we gained from Chernobyl. So he's really concerned about making sure that we train new scientists in this area and keep that chain of knowledge going forward. You
know, those maps that you showed, both the one that showed the radioactive plume and the waste traveling, is frightening. And you'd think that if there's that massive amount, that it would have to have some kind of impact.
Well, you know, it was a massive volume of water that went into the ocean that was radioactive because, of course, they were washing off the cooling ponds and the reactors with water that then flowed in. There's concern about a continuing leak, and there's radioactivity still going into the ocean. But it does decay over time, and it's a big ocean that's getting diluted in. And so by the time it gets to our coast, it's really a very small level.
All right, Heather Goldstone, thanks so much.
My pleasure.